So lately, there's been a lot of commotion when it comes to the caravan that is headed here from Honduras. Now, if you are Donald Trump, if you're one of his supporters, then you don't even care about hearing these individuals out. You just want to blanket reject them and not allow them to enter the country. This is essentially what Donald Trump has been advocating for. Now, let me remind you that under U.S. law, individuals seeking refugee status, they can actually go to U.S. legal ports of entry in order to seek asylum. But what Donald Trump is advocating for, and what he's getting a lot of Republicans to buy into, is that these individuals, they pose a threat to the United States, and no, they should not be allowed to enter the country. Now, I don't even have to get into all of the conspiracy theories around this particular issue, right? Because if you're watching Fox News or listening to Donald Trump, then there's this absurd idea that Middle Easterners and potentially members of ISIS infiltrated this caravan. That makes no sense whatsoever, because if you're actually headed towards a U.S. legal port of entry, then you have to make your case. And I think that we determine pretty quickly whether or not someone is seeking asylum for legitimate or illegitimate reasons. Now, look, here's the thing about this. Being a country comprised of immigrants, it's only right to at least give them the opportunity to make their case, to just hear them out at a minimum. But American political discourse with regard to immigration has gotten so toxic that even stating that is a controversial opinion. So, since Donald Trump has been desperately trying to make this a campaign issue, a lot of Republicans are talking about this caravan of immigrants coming from Honduras. And let me remind you, a lot of these people are fleeing violence. They're seeking a better life for themselves, and they're hoping that the United States will give them a chance. But that doesn't matter to Donald Trump or his sycophantic cultist supporters. And Emma Vigeland of Rebel HQ has been attending Donald Trump rallies across the country, and she was recently in the state of Arizona, and she spoke with Donald Trump supporters about what they would do to ameliorate the immigration situation, or just in general to get their thoughts on it. And what they said about this issue was downright disturbing.
So Tucker Carlson had this segment that went viral where he said that the changing demographics with more and more Latina people coming into the country, it's causing more volatility in the country. What are your thoughts on that?
Build the wall.
I think if they were Republican voters, they'd be stopped.
The Latinas at the border?
Yeah, I think, and I think 4,000 Latinas coming in less than a month before the midterm elections. It didn't just happen. It wasn't a grassroots overnight decision. I mean, it took some planning, and somebody's behind it.
What would solve the whole thing in the border if they would just start shooting? Only shoot a couple, and they would go home.
You think deterrence would work?
If they would shoot.
I really feel like if the people from Mexico would come here and emerge into the American culture, but they really, I see it, they want to make America part of Mexico. And I'm opposed to that.
So, I don't honestly even know where to begin, so we'll just get to the obvious use of, conspiracy theories. I think that some of these insane theories that they are concocting, maybe it came from Fox News, maybe it, came from their own minds, but this is what one lady says. I think that if they were Republican voters, they'd be stopped. Okay? And she also says 4,000 Latinas coming in less than a month before the elections, it wasn't a grassroots overnight decision. It took some planning and somebody's behind it. In other words, we all know who she's talking about. It's George Soros. He's behind it. He wants Democrats to win, so what he's doing is he's trying to get immigrants from Honduras to come into the United States, flood the country, and vote in elections across the country in order to make sure that Republicans lose. Well, if you just think slightly about the logistics of this theory for a second, it doesn't make any sense. Wouldn't it be easier for Democrats, if they really wanted to win, to just expand the electorate here in the United States? do what Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did in the 14th Congressional District of New York and try to register new voters? Why would you go out of your way to bring in people from a different country in order to vote and win elections here? Isn't that a strategy that will end up making them lose, since that's obviously more difficult than just signing up new voters here? I mean, there's no logic to what they're thinking. There's no rhyme or reason. It's just, it's bad, I don't like it, so it must be that somebody's behind it, and I'm just going to assume George Soros, because he's behind every protest ever and anything that I don't like in the country. Now, the question is, what specifically would give her this idea that undocumented immigrants are even allowed to vote in the first place? Because obviously, they're not allowed to vote. Oh, right, it's actually the President of the United States who put this idea in voters' heads when he falsely claimed that millions voted illegally in the 2016 election because his ego couldn't accept the fact that he lost the popular vote. Now, even if Donald Trump didn't specifically say that undocumented immigrants are allowed to vote, well, if you read that tweet and you're a Donald Trump supporter and he's talking about voter fraud, then you can extrapolate based on that and assume, well, since these people are coming here and since people of color overwhelmingly are more likely to vote Democrat, then it must be the case that these individuals are coming here specifically to flood elections and vote Democrat and tip the scales in favor of Democrats. But one, they can't vote. They're not citizens. And two, that strategy, again, is more difficult than actually registering new voters in your own state or county. Now, we get to the individual who said the most disturbing thing ever. He said, what would solve the whole thing at the border if they just start shooting? Only shoot a couple and they would go home. Now, I don't think it's unreasonable to also assume that this individual is against abortion and he would likely consider himself part of the pro-life movement. He's a Donald Trump supporter. By and large, they're going to be against abortion and self-identify as pro-life. Why do all of these pro-life people keep contradicting themselves? We saw Michael Knowles at Politicon claim that he's pro-life, but when Kyle Kulinski pressed him on the death penalty, he said, I love the death penalty.
I'm so pro-life, so you're against the death penalty. I'm against the death penalty. I love the death penalty. I'm not going to. So you're not pro-life. So you're not pro-life. So you're not pro-life. I love the death. So you're not pro-life.
We see Ben Shapiro talking about how pro-life he is when it comes to abortion, but advocating for wars that kill hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. And now we see someone who is presumably pro-life advocating for us to kill immigrants. To kill them extrajudicially, mind you. Don't even hear them out. Don't give them due process. Just kill them right there. That's what these individuals advocate for. They have no human empathy whatsoever. They only care about stopping immigrants at all costs. So the means justify the ends for these people. And one person said they want to make America part of Mexico, and I'm opposed to that. Now, I honestly don't even know what that means. Are you honestly suggesting that these people who are coming from Honduras want to have Mexico annex a portion of the United States? First of all, how would that work? Why would they have to send people here to annex portions of our country? First, wouldn't they just do it? And second of all, logistically speaking, how would this work? From a military standpoint, why would Mexico want to go up against the United States, who has the strongest military in the world? When you compare Mexico's military to the United States military, there's no comparison. Mexico, their military would be the size of an ant, and ours would be the size of Shaq, a giant. So it doesn't make any sense. These are people who I feel like they're just too far gone. There's no logic. I mean, if you try to present them with facts, if you try to present them with an argument, it doesn't matter because they're too far gone. They don't live in the world of facts and reality. They live in a world of feelings. Now, there's some example for this theory that I have that they put feelings over facts, because Emma Vigeland also talked to them about President Trump's approval rating among black voters only sitting at 3%. And it was clear based on their reactions that these Trump voters overwhelmingly put feelings over facts.
Right now, the latest poll shows that Trump's approval rating among African Americans is at 3%. Why do you think that is?
Fake news.
Fake news, the polling?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of people here. I've seen African American People.
That's anecdotal evidence. That's not the totality.
It's not worth even answering her question. It's ridiculous.
I don't think that's real. I mean, they can say what they want. They also said Trump wouldn't win the election.
Right.
And he did.
But that polling was wrong around the margins. It was still correct on the national level.
Really? Okay.
Let's laugh.
You guys, I mean, it's just facts.
Okay. All right, next question.
Why is it not facts?
Did you say 3%?
3%.
I didn't even want to talk to you. You're a joke. You're a serious joke.
All right, next question. Next question.
Yeah. 3.
No, that's not right. Like 18%. Where'd you get that?
It was an ABC News poll.
Oh, well, of course. 3%.
It's gone up way.
It's more like 25%.
The Clinton News Network is why I think that is. I highly doubt it's at 3%. That just doesn't even sound right. So I could tell you more than 3% just here in Arizona.
3%? I'm looking at Fox all the time. It's like 35%.
That's close to the national average, so there's no way that's true.
I think that's a lot better than we think, and there's a lot of hidden folks that don't want to come out.
Now, Emma asked the first guy why he believes Trump's approval rating among African Americans is at 3%, and his answer was fake news. That's it, it's that simple. I don't like it, so it must be fake news. I'm honestly not sure if he thinks the poll itself is fake or if the poll is real and black voters just simply disapprove of Donald Trump at higher numbers because of fake news. I don't know, but at least at the end of his conversation with Emma, he kind of conceded, but the guy on the left of her was so triggered, he personally attacked Emma and called her a joke. I mean, is this not the definition of snowflakeism? She presented him with a fact, she said something that offended him, and he got outraged and he personally attacked her, called her a joke. I mean, these people are unreal. This is why I say that Donald Trump supporters are in the MAGA cult. It's because they're simply following Donald Trump for purposes of following Donald Trump. I mean, certainly some people probably were drawn to his anti-establishment appeal, but by and large, a lot of these Republican voters who are just sycophantic Trump supporters, it's a cult. They don't even care if you say something that penetrates that bubble that they're living in. They're going to not just be offended by that, they may even lash out and personally attack you, as that individual did there. Now, there was another group of female Trump supporters that just laughed in Emma's face when she told them that the poll came from ABC News, and they just inserted their own percentage and said, well, it's more like 25%. In other words, we feel like that poll is wrong. We feel like it should probably just be like 25%, so that's what it is. I mean, imagine being so arrogant that you just insert whatever your feelings are and into the conversation, and you treat them as if they're facts. Let me try it. So I feel as if support for Medicare for All should be around 90-95%, so I'm just going to start saying that. Now, I love how these same people probably didn't disregard ABC News polls back in 2015 and 2016 when they showed Trump leading the Republican field during the primaries, but all of a sudden, now that the poll is producing results that they don't like, well, they're calling into question its accuracy. Now look, is it acceptable to question the methodology of polls? Of course it is. I think I do it myself. But they don't have a nuanced, reasonable, and thorough take on what's problematic about this poll. In fact, Emma didn't give them the specifics. She just cited the results, and they rejected it. No, this poll is false. It's inaccurate. It's fake news. It's ABC News? Oh, well, that's why it's wrong. Well, what specifically do you not like about ABC polls and their methodology? Do you think that their sample sizes are too low? Do you think that the wording of their questions biases the results? Do you think that the sample is not representative of actual voting demographics? What specifically do you not like about this poll? Be nuanced and explain it, but it's not about nuance. It's not about the technicalities of polls. It's about their feelings. And one individual, the last guy that you saw there, I believe said, well, maybe one of the factors with black voters and why they didn't want to vocalize their support for Donald Trump was because they didn't want to, quote, come out. In other words, when pollsters poll black voters, they're too afraid to say whether or not they support Donald Trump. Now, in certain instances, is it the case that the pollster and what the respondent perceives to be the correct answer, could that bias the results? I mean, sure, that's certainly a possibility. I was a research assistant for a professor who did polling in the Middle East and North Africa. She did polling in Tunisia, Algeria, even Libya for one poll, which was fascinating. And what we were genuinely concerned with here was when it came to questions of religion and secularism, would respondents answer based on the perceived level of religiosity of the person conducting the poll? So, for example, if someone was being asked about secularism, would they be more comfortable answering truthfully if the person who's asking them the question was perceived to be secular? Or conversely, if someone was wearing a hijab and appeared to be religious, would they feel more inclined to answer in a more religious manner? I mean, that's certainly something that's important. But in the United States, is this going to be a factor? No, it's not going to be a factor. And I'm being extra kind and even trying to explain this to them, not as if, it's going to change their mind or matter. It's all about their feelings. They feel like this poll can't possibly be accurate because I like Donald Trump, so how could a black person not like Donald Trump? So they just insert what they think the poll number should be. It's unreal, and it really is demoralizing to see this, and shout out to Emma Vigeland because she's doing the Lord's work here. But how can we possibly win over these types of voters? How can we when you can't reason with them using facts and data and statistics? You just can't. So how do we win them over? The answer is we can't. We just have to register to vote and overwhelm them at the polls, sign up new voters, get millennials interested in voting. And part of that falls on the responsibility of the Democratic Party in trying to excite their base. But by and large, you can't win over these types of voters. The guy talking about shooting immigrants, he's a lost cause. The woman who believes that these people are coming from Honduras to vote in our 2018 midterm elections, you can't win them over. I think that's becoming increasingly clear as we hear from some of these Donald Trump supporters. Now, is it the case that every single Donald Trump supporter is a lost cause? No, not necessarily. I don't believe that. But the problem is, I think what liberals and progressives are trying to do is present counter-arguments that rely on facts when these people, they don't operate on facts. They fundamentally operate on emotion and feelings. It's kind of depressing because these people are they're too far gone. I don't know how else to put it. They may seem a little bit harsh, but it's true.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.